In the marble corridors of Aldermere Palace, where whispers carry more weight than swords and loyalty can be bought with a purse of gold, one man's integrity would ignite a revolution that would shake the very foundations of the crown. Captain Marcus Thorne had served the royal family for 15 years, believing honor meant following orders without question. But, when he discovered a conspiracy so treacherous it threatened to destroy an innocent woman's life, he faced an impossible choice: remain silent and preserve his position, or risk everything to expose the truth. What he didn't know was that his decision would uncover secrets buried so deep in the palace walls that even the stones themselves seemed to hold their breath. The autumn rain pelted against the towering windows of Aldermere Palace with relentless fury, creating rivulets that traced intricate patterns down the ancient glass. Captain Marcus Thorne adjusted his ceremonial sword as he made his evening rounds through the east wing, his polished boots echoing against the polished marble floors that had witnessed centuries of royal drama. At 42, Marcus carried himself with the disciplined bearing of a man who had dedicated his life to service, his weathered face bearing the subtle scars of countless loyal years protecting the crown. The palace felt different tonight, charged with an undercurrent of tension that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand at attention. He had learned to trust his instincts during his 15 years of service, and something was definitely amiss within these hallowed halls. The usual evening chatter from the servants had been replaced by hushed conversations that ceased abruptly whenever he approached, and even the normally jovial kitchen staff seemed to move about their duties with unusual urgency. As Marcus rounded the corner leading to the private apartments, he encountered Lady Isabella Fairmont, the king's newly appointed cultural advisor, hurrying down the corridor with obvious distress etched across her delicate features. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her auburn hair escaping from its elegant pins, and her emerald dress bore the wrinkles of someone who had been pacing anxiously for hours. "Captain Thorne," she called out, her voice carrying a tremor that immediately put him on high alert. "Might I have a word with you in private? It's a matter of utmost importance." Marcus studied her face carefully, noting the genuine fear in her amber eyes. Lady Isabella had arrived at court 6 months ago with impeccable credentials and the highest recommendations from the Royal Academy of Arts. She had quickly gained the respect of the royal family through her innovative cultural programs and her genuine dedication to preserving the kingdom's artistic heritage. Her sudden distress was completely out of character. "Of course, my lady," Marcus replied, gesturing toward a small alcove decorated with portraits of former monarchs. "What troubles you?" Isabella glanced nervously around the corridor before moving closer, lowering her voice to barely above a whisper. "Captain, I've discovered something terrible. There's a plot being orchestrated within the palace walls, and I fear I'm the target. Someone in a position of great authority is working to have me dismissed from my position through false accusations and manufactured evidence." Marcus felt his protective instincts surge to the forefront. "What kind of accusations, my lady? And who would dare orchestrate such a scheme?" "They plan to accuse me of embezzling funds from the cultural preservation budget," Isabella explained, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I've been carefully reviewing my accounts, and I believe someone has been manipulating the financial records to make it appear as though I've been stealing money intended for historical artifact restoration. The amounts involved would constitute a serious crime that could result in imprisonment." The captain's jaw tightened as he processed this information. Financial crimes against the crown were taken extremely seriously, and the evidence would need to be overwhelming before such accusations could be brought forward. "Have you discovered who might be behind this conspiracy?" Isabella hesitated, clearly struggling with whether to voice her suspicions. "I have my concerns, but I dare not speak them aloud without absolute proof. What I can tell you is that I overheard a conversation 3 nights ago that chilled me to the bone. 2 individuals were discussing the timeline for my removal, speaking about it as though it were already a foregone conclusion." Marcus leaned forward intently. "Where did this conversation take place, and what exactly did you hear?" "I was working late in the archives, researching a manuscript for the upcoming cultural exhibition, when I heard voices coming from the administrative offices above. The ventilation system carries sound remarkably well in that part of the building. One person was expressing concern about the timeline, while the other was reassuring them that everything was proceeding according to plan. They mentioned specific dates and spoke about having definitive evidence ready for presentation to His Majesty within the week." The implications sent a chill down Marcus's spine. If Isabella was telling the truth, then someone with significant influence was orchestrating an elaborate frame-up that could destroy her reputation and career.
Did you recognize either of the voices? One of them, yes, Isabella admitted reluctantly. But, Captain, I must ask for your complete discretion in this matter. If I'm wrong about what I suspect, the consequences could be devastating for everyone involved. And if I'm right, then speaking out could put both of us in serious danger. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling the tension in her muscles. Lady Isabella, you have my word that anything you share with me will be held in the strictest confidence. My duty is to protect all members of the royal household, and that includes protecting them from internal threats as well as external ones. Taking a deep breath, Isabella looked directly into his eyes. The voice I recognized belonged to Queen Consort Vivian. She was speaking with someone whose identity I couldn't determine, but their tone suggested they were working together on this scheme. Captain, I believe the Queen Consort wants me removed from the palace, and she's willing to destroy my reputation to accomplish it. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Queen Consort Vivian had married King Edmund 3 years ago in what was widely considered a political alliance that strengthened the kingdom's ties with neighboring realms. She was known for her sharp intellect and her fierce protection of royal traditions, but Marcus had never heard any whispers of her engaging in such underhanded tactics. The idea that she would orchestrate such an elaborate conspiracy seemed almost incomprehensible. That's an extremely serious allegation, my lady, Marcus said carefully. Queen Consort Vivian holds tremendous influence within the court. If she truly is behind this plot, then we're dealing with a situation that could have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. Isabella nodded gravely. I understand the gravity of what I'm suggesting, Captain. But I also understand what I heard, and I know what I've discovered in my financial records. Someone has been very carefully and systematically building a case against me, and they've had access to information and resources that only someone in a position of highest authority could command. Marcus began pacing slowly, his mind racing through the implications and potential courses of action. Have you spoken to anyone else about these suspicions? Any other members of the royal family or trusted advisors? No one, Isabella replied firmly. You're the only person I've confided in, and only because of your reputation for honor and integrity. I've heard the other staff members speak of your fairness and your unwavering commitment to justice. If there's anyone in this palace who might help me uncover the truth, I believe it's you. The weight of her trust settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders. He had sworn an oath to protect the royal family and maintain order within the palace, but that oath also included protecting innocent people from injustice. If Isabella was telling the truth, then his duty was clear, regardless of who might be involved in the conspiracy. Lady Isabella, I need you to gather any evidence you have of these financial irregularities. Document everything you've discovered, but do so discreetly. I'll begin my own investigation into this matter, but I must caution you to be extremely careful about your actions and conversations from this point forward. If there truly is a conspiracy against you, then the perpetrators will be watching for any sign that you're aware of their plans. Relief flooded Isabella's features for the first time since their conversation began. Thank you, Captain. I cannot express how grateful I am for your willingness to help. I've been carrying this burden alone for days, and I was beginning to fear that I had no allies within these walls. You're not alone, Marcus assured her with conviction. However, I must emphasize the importance of maintaining absolute discretion. Continue with your regular duties as though nothing has changed, but be observant of any unusual activities or conversations. If you discover anything else of significance, find a way to inform me immediately. As Isabella hurried away toward her quarters, Marcus remained in the alcove, staring up at the portrait of King Edmund's grandfather, whose painted eyes seemed to watch him with knowing intensity. The old king had ruled during a time of great prosperity and peace, but he had also been known for his ability to root out corruption and conspiracy within his own court. Marcus wondered what wisdom the old monarch might offer if he could step down from his gilded frame. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted his contemplation, and Marcus straightened his posture as he recognized the distinctive gait of Sir Geoffrey Hartwell, the Queen Consort's personal secretary and closest advisor.
Sir Geoffrey was a thin, sharp-featured man in his 50s who had served in various administrative roles for over 2 decades. His loyalty to Queen Consort Vivian was absolute, and his efficiency in managing her affairs was legendary throughout the palace. "Captain Thorne," Sir Geoffrey said with his usual polite but distant tone.
"Working late this evening, I see."
"Just completing the evening security rounds, Sir Geoffrey," Marcus replied neutrally.
"The East Wing is secure for the night." Sir Geoffrey's pale eyes seemed to study Marcus with unusual intensity. "Excellent.
The Queen Consort has mentioned how much she appreciates your dedication to maintaining order within the palace. She values loyalty above all other qualities, as I'm sure you understand."
The comment struck Marcus as oddly pointed, almost as though Sir Geoffrey was sending him a subtle message.
"Loyalty to the crown has always been my guiding principle," Marcus replied carefully.
"Indeed," Sir Geoffrey said with a thin smile. "Well, I must attend to some urgent correspondence for Her Majesty. Good evening, Captain."
As Sir Geoffrey disappeared around the corner, Marcus felt a growing sense of unease.
The timing of their encounter seemed too coincidental, and the secretary's emphasis on loyalty felt like a warning.
If Queen Consort Vivian truly was involved in a conspiracy against Lady Isabella, then Sir Geoffrey would undoubtedly be her primary accomplice in such an endeavor. Marcus made his way to his private office, a small but comfortable room adjacent to the main guardhouse where he kept his official records and conducted administrative duties. He locked the door behind him and moved to his desk, pulling out a leather-bound journal that he used for personal observations and unofficial notes. Opening to a fresh page, he began documenting everything Isabella had told him, including specific details about dates, locations, and conversations. As he wrote, Marcus found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about the palace hierarchy and the people he had served faithfully for so many years. The idea that Queen Consort Vivian might be capable of orchestrating such an elaborate deception challenged his fundamental understanding of royal character and honor. Yet Isabella's fear had been genuine, and her account had contained too many specific details to dismiss as paranoid delusions. The clock on his desk chimed midnight, and Marcus realized he had been writing for nearly an hour. His hand cramped from gripping the pen so tightly, and his mind buzzed with questions that demanded answers. Tomorrow he would need to begin his investigation in earnest, but tonight he needed to process the full implications of what he had learned. Outside his window, the rain continued its relentless assault on the palace grounds, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was only just beginning. Dawn broke gray and somber over Aldermere Palace, casting long shadows through the corridors as Marcus began his investigation with the methodical precision that had made him one of the kingdom's most respected guards. He had barely slept, his mind churning through possible approaches to uncovering the truth about Lady Isabella's allegations without arousing suspicion among those who might be involved in the conspiracy. His first stop was the palace's financial records office, a cramped but meticulously organized chamber where Master Accountant Harold Pemberton maintained the kingdom's extensive bookkeeping systems. Harold was a meticulous man in his 60s who had served the crown for nearly 4 decades, and his reputation for accuracy and integrity was unquestioned throughout the realm. If anyone could help Marcus understand the financial irregularities that Isabella had discovered, it would be Harold.
"Captain Thorne," Harold greeted him warmly as Marcus entered the office. "What brings you to my domain so early this morning? Surely the guard's payroll isn't due for another week."
Marcus had prepared a plausible cover story during his sleepless night. "Actually, Harold, I'm conducting a routine security review of our financial procedures. There have been some concerns raised about potential vulnerabilities in our record-keeping systems, and I wanted to better understand how the various departmental budgets are managed and monitored." Harold's eyes lit up with professional enthusiasm.
"An excellent initiative, Captain. Financial security is just as important as physical security, though I'm afraid it receives far less attention from most people. Which departments are you most concerned about?"
The cultural preservation budget has been mentioned as potentially vulnerable due to its complex structure and multiple funding sources, Marcus replied, watching Harold's reaction carefully. "Ah, yes, Lady Isabella's domain," Harold said, moving to a large filing cabinet and retrieving several thick ledgers. "It is indeed a complex budget, with funding coming from royal allocations, private donations, and international cultural exchange programs. The lady has done an admirable job managing it, though I must admit the complexity does create certain challenges for oversight. Marcus felt his pulse quicken.
What kind of challenges?
Harold spread the ledgers across his desk, opening them to pages filled with neat columns of figures and notations. Well, you see, the cultural budget involves numerous small transactions for artifact acquisition, restoration materials, scholarly research, and exhibition expenses. Unlike the more straightforward budgets for things like palace maintenance or guard salaries, cultural expenditures often require specialized vendors and international transfers that can be difficult to verify quickly.
Have you noticed any irregularities in Lady Isabella's accounting?
Marcus asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Harold paused in his examination of the ledgers, his expression becoming more serious.
That's an interesting question, Captain.
Just yesterday, Sir Geoffrey Hartwell visited me with some concerns about potential discrepancies in the cultural budget.
He presented me with some documentation that suggested certain expenditures might not be properly authorized. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of documentation?
Purchase orders and payment authorizations that appeared to have been processed without proper approval signatures, Harold explained, pointing to specific entries in the ledgers. Sir Geoffrey was quite concerned about the implications and asked me to conduct a thorough review of all transactions from the past 6 months.
And what have you discovered in your review? Harold's discomfort was evident as he shifted in his chair.
I must admit, Captain, that some of the discrepancies are troubling. There appear to be several instances where significant sums were allocated for artifact purchases, but the corresponding documentation seems incomplete or potentially falsified. However, I want to emphasize that these are preliminary findings, and there could be perfectly innocent explanations for what appears irregular.
Marcus leaned forward intently. Harold, in your professional opinion, do these irregularities suggest intentional fraud, or could they be the result of administrative errors or procedural misunderstandings?
The master accountant was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with the implications of his findings.
Captain, I've been managing financial records for this kingdom for nearly 40 years.
In that time, I've seen every conceivable type of accounting error, from simple miscalculations to complex clerical mistakes. What I've discovered in the cultural budget doesn't fit the pattern of typical errors. The irregularities are too systematic and too well concealed to be accidental. The confirmation of Isabella's worst fears settled like a stone in Marcus's stomach. Harold, I need you to understand that this information must be kept in absolute confidence until we can determine the full scope of what we're dealing with.
Have you shared your preliminary findings with anyone other than Sir Geoffrey?
No one else has been informed, Harold assured him.
Sir Geoffrey specifically requested that I keep my investigation confidential until it could be completed.
He expressed concern about potential damage to Lady Isabella's reputation if word of the irregularities became public before the facts could be established. Marcus found the irony of Sir Geoffrey's supposed concern for Isabella's reputation particularly bitter, given what he now suspected about the man's true intentions. Harold, I'm going to ask you to continue your review, but I want you to document everything you discover with extreme care. Note not only what you find, but also when you find it and what led you to examine specific transactions. This documentation may become critically important.
Of course, Captain. Might I ask what has prompted this security review? Has there been some specific threat or concern raised about financial irregularities?
Marcus chose his words carefully.
Let's just say that we've received some information suggesting that our financial security procedures might be vulnerable to exploitation. Your findings seem to confirm that these concerns were justified.
After leaving Harold's office, Marcus made his way to the servants' quarters, where he hoped to gather additional information about the palace's internal dynamics and any unusual activities that might be connected to the conspiracy against Isabella. The servants' area was always bustling with activity during the morning hours, as the staff prepared for the day's duties and exchanged the gossip and information that formed the unofficial communication network of the palace.
Mrs.
Eleanor Hartbridge, the head housekeeper, was a formidable woman in her 50s who had served the royal family for over 20 years. She commanded respect from all the palace staff and had a reputation for knowing everything that happened within the palace walls. Marcus found her in the main servants' hall, supervising the distribution of cleaning supplies and daily assignments.
Captain Thorne, she greeted him with a warm smile. What brings you to our domain this morning?
I hope there haven't been any security concerns in the servants' quarters. Nothing of that nature, Mrs. Hartbridge, Marcus replied. I'm conducting some routine inquiries about staff observations and general palace security. Your people see and hear more than anyone else in the palace, and their insights are invaluable for maintaining proper security. Mrs. Hartbridge's expression became more serious, and she gestured for him to follow her to a small private office where they could speak without being overheard by the other staff members. Captain, if you're looking for information about unusual activities or concerns, I must tell you that there has been considerable discussion among the staff about recent developments.
What kind of developments?
Well, there have been several meetings in the Queen Consort's private chambers that have required enhanced privacy measures, Mrs. Hartbridge explained. The usual cleaning and maintenance schedules have been altered to ensure that certain rooms remain undisturbed during specific time periods. This isn't entirely unusual, mind you, but the frequency and secrecy surrounding these meetings has been noted by the staff.
Marcus felt his investigative instincts sharpen. How frequently have these meetings been occurring?
Nearly every evening for the past 2 weeks, Mrs. Hartbridge replied. Sir Geoffrey has been coordinating the scheduling, and he's been quite insistent that none of the regular staff be present in the vicinity during these gatherings.
The cleaning staff has been instructed to complete their duties in those areas either much earlier or much later than usual. Have any of the staff observed who has been attending these meetings?
Mrs. Hartbridge lowered her voice further. My girls are observant, Captain, even when they're not supposed to be. They've noted that Master Pemberton has been visiting the Queen Consort's chambers on several occasions, which is unusual since financial matters are typically discussed in the administrative offices.
They've also seen Sir Reginald Blackwood, the palace legal advisor, attending these evening gatherings.
The involvement of both the master accountant and the legal advisor painted a disturbing picture of the conspiracy's scope and sophistication. Marcus realized that Isabella was facing opponents who had access to the highest levels of palace administration and who possessed the expertise necessary to fabricate convincing evidence of financial wrongdoing.
Mrs. Hartbridge, have the staff noticed any changes in Lady Isabella's behavior or routine during this same period?
The poor dear has seemed quite distressed lately, the housekeeper replied with genuine concern. She's been working much later hours than usual, often remaining in the archives and offices well past midnight. The night staff have reported seeing lights in her workspace at all hours, and she's appeared increasingly anxious and withdrawn during her interactions with other staff members. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for Isabella's courage in the face of such a sophisticated conspiracy. She had recognized the danger she was facing and had been attempting to gather evidence to defend herself, even while her enemies were closing in around her.
One more question, Mrs. Hartbridge. Have you noticed any unusual interest in Lady Isabella's activities or living quarters? Any requests for access or information that seemed out of the ordinary?
The housekeeper's expression darkened.
Actually, yes. Sir Geoffrey has made several inquiries about Lady Isabella's personal effects and workspace.
He's requested that the cleaning staff pay particular attention to any documents or materials that might be left unsecured in her office or chambers. He claimed it was a security precaution, but the staff found his instructions rather unusual. The picture that was emerging from Marcus's investigation was becoming clearer and more alarming by the hour. Queen Consort Vivian, working with Sir Geoffrey, Harold Pemberton, and Sir Reginald Blackwood, appeared to be orchestrating an elaborate frame-up designed to destroy Lady Isabella's reputation and remove her from the palace. The conspiracy involved falsifying financial records, manipulating accounting procedures, and conducting secret meetings to coordinate their efforts. Marcus thanked Mrs. Hartbridge for her invaluable information and made his way toward the legal offices, where he hoped to gather additional intelligence about Sir Reginald Blackwood's potential involvement in the conspiracy. However, as he approached the legal wing of the palace, he encountered an unexpected obstacle in the form of Sir Geoffrey himself, who appeared to be waiting for him with obvious intent.
Captain Thorne, Sir Geoffrey said with his characteristic cold smile. I was hoping to have a word with you about a matter of some importance.
Marcus felt his muscles tense instinctively, but he maintained a neutral expression.
Of course, Sir Geoffrey. How may I assist you?
I've received some concerning reports about your activities this morning, Sir Geoffrey said, his pale eyes studying Marcus with obvious suspicion. It seems you've been conducting unauthorized inquiries into various palace operations, asking questions about financial procedures and staff observations.
Might I ask what has prompted these investigations?
The directness of Sir Geoffrey's confrontation caught Marcus off guard, but he quickly realized that his morning activities had been reported back to the conspiracy's leaders. The network of informants and surveillance was more extensive than he had anticipated. I'm conducting a routine security review that was requested by the palace administration, Marcus replied carefully.
Financial security and staff awareness are important components of overall palace security. Sir Geoffrey's smile became even colder. Captain, I think we both understand that there's nothing routine about your current activities. You've been asking very specific questions about very specific people and procedures.
I'm curious about what might have prompted such targeted inquiries. Marcus realized that he was facing a crucial moment in his investigation. Sir Geoffrey clearly suspected that someone had alerted Marcus to the conspiracy, and his next response would determine whether he could continue his investigation or whether he would be forced into an open confrontation before he had gathered sufficient evidence to expose the truth. Sir Geoffrey, if you have concerns about my investigative methods or my authority to conduct security reviews, I suggest you take those concerns to King Edmund directly, Marcus said with quiet authority.
I answer to His Majesty, and my duties are assigned by the Crown, not by individual advisors or administrators.
The challenge in Marcus's response caused Sir Geoffrey's expression to harden noticeably.
Very well, Captain.
But I think you should be aware that your recent activities have not gone unnoticed by those who value discretion and loyalty above curiosity and interference. I trust you'll keep that in mind as you continue your duties. As Sir Geoffrey walked away, Marcus felt the weight of the conspiracy's attention settling fully upon him. His investigation had been discovered, and the stakes had just increased dramatically for everyone involved. The afternoon sun struggled through heavy clouds as Marcus retreated to his quarters to reassess his strategy, knowing that his investigation had been compromised but determined not to abandon Lady Isabella to the machinations of her enemies. The confrontation with Sir Geoffrey had made it clear that the conspiracy possessed an extensive network of informants and that every move Marcus made would be monitored and reported back to the Queen Consort and her allies. Settling into his private study, Marcus spread out his notes and began analyzing the information he had gathered from multiple perspectives. Harold Pemberton's confirmation of financial irregularities, Mrs. Hartbridge's observations about secret meetings and unusual requests, and Sir Geoffrey's obvious knowledge of Marcus's investigation all painted a picture of a sophisticated conspiracy that had been months in the planning. A soft knock at his door interrupted his analysis, and Marcus opened it to find Thomas Whitmore, a young guard who served under his command and who had always demonstrated exceptional observational skills and unwavering loyalty. Thomas's presence offered Marcus an opportunity to expand his investigation while maintaining the secrecy that was now more crucial than ever. "Captain," Thomas said quietly, "I hope I'm not disturbing important work, but I have some information that I believe you need to hear. It concerns Lady Isabella and some activities I've observed over the past several days." Marcus invited Thomas into his study and closed the door securely behind him.
"What have you observed, Thomas?"
"Sir, I've been assigned to evening patrol duties in the administrative wing, and I've noticed some unusual patterns of activity that seemed worth reporting. For the past week, I've observed Sir Geoffrey meeting with various individuals in offices and chambers that are normally unoccupied during evening hours."
"Can you provide specific details about these meetings?"
Thomas pulled a small notebook from his pocket and consulted his careful observations. 3 nights ago, I observed Sir Geoffrey, Master Pemberton, and Sir Reginald meeting in the secondary conference room for approximately 2 hours. They had documents spread across the table, and their conversation appeared quite intense. 2 nights ago, Sir Geoffrey met privately with someone I couldn't identify clearly, but their discussion lasted until well past midnight. Marcus felt his pulse quicken.
"Were you able to overhear any portion of their conversations?"
"Limited portions, sir, but what I heard was troubling," Thomas replied. During the three-way meeting, I heard Sir Geoffrey mention something about finalizing the evidence and ensuring that the presentation would be convincing. Master Pemberton seemed to express some concerns about the timeline, while Sir Reginald was discussing legal precedents for similar cases. The confirmation that the legal advisor was actively participating in the conspiracy added another layer of complexity to the situation. Sir Reginald's involvement suggested that the conspirators were preparing formal legal proceedings against Isabella, which would make their false evidence significantly more difficult to counter once the accusations became public. "Thomas, last night I heard something that has concerned me greatly," Marcus said carefully. "I overheard Sir Geoffrey speaking with an unidentified individual about Lady Isabella specifically. They mentioned having definitive proof of financial misconduct and discussed presenting their case to His Majesty within days." Thomas's expression became grave. "Sir, if Lady Isabella is truly innocent of any wrongdoing, then she's facing a conspiracy that could destroy her life and reputation. The evidence they're preparing might be convincing enough to result in criminal charges." Marcus nodded grimly. "That's exactly what concerns me. Thomas, I need you to continue your evening patrol duties, but I want you to pay particular attention to any further meetings or conversations involving the individuals we've discussed. Document everything you observe, but be extremely careful not to arouse suspicion about your interest in their activities." "Understood, Captain. Is there anything else I can do to assist with this situation?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I need you to quietly observe Lady Isabella's routines and behavior as well. If she's being framed for financial crimes, then her enemies may be planning additional moves against her beyond simply falsifying accounting records. They might attempt to plant evidence in her quarters or create situations that would further incriminate her." After Thomas departed, Marcus spent the remainder of the afternoon developing a comprehensive plan to expose the conspiracy before it could destroy Lady Isabella. The challenge was enormous. He needed to gather irrefutable proof of the frame-up while avoiding detection by a network of conspirators who had already demonstrated their awareness of his investigation. As evening approached, Marcus made his way to the palace archives, where he hoped to find Lady Isabella working late as had become her habit during this period of crisis. The archives were housed in one of the oldest sections of the palace, with towering shelves of historical documents and artifacts that represented centuries of the kingdom's cultural heritage. The atmosphere was hushed and scholarly, providing an appropriate setting for the serious conversation that Marcus knew they needed to have. He found Isabella exactly where he expected, hunched over a collection of financial documents at a large reading table surrounded by towers of ledgers and files. Her appearance showed the strain of the past several days clearly. Her face was pale with exhaustion, her eyes were rimmed with dark circles, and her usually pristine clothing was wrinkled from long hours of intensive work. "Lady Isabella," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up quickly, relief flooding her features when she recognized him. "Captain Thorne, thank goodness. I was hoping you would come. I discovered additional evidence of the conspiracy against me, but I've also realized that our enemies are moving much faster than I initially believed." Marcus took a seat across from her at the reading table. "I've been conducting my own investigation, and I'm afraid I have both good news and troubling news to share with you. The good news is that I've been able to confirm your suspicions about the conspiracy and gather evidence about the individuals involved. The troubling news is that they're aware of my investigation and are likely accelerating their timeline as a result." Isabella's hands trembled slightly as she gathered the documents spread before her. "Captain, I've been working around the clock to analyze every financial transaction from the past year, and I've discovered that the falsifications are even more extensive than I initially realized. Someone has been systematically altering records, creating fake purchase orders, and manipulating payment authorizations to build a comprehensive case against me. What have you discovered about the scope of these falsifications?" Isabella opened one of the ledgers and pointed to a series of entries that had been altered with obvious skill and attention to detail. "They've created a pattern of supposed embezzlement that spans 8 months and involves more than 50,000 gold crowns. The falsifications are sophisticated enough that a casual review would likely conclude that I've been systematically stealing money from the cultural preservation budget." Marcus studied the altered entries with growing admiration for the conspiracy's thoroughness and growing concern for Isabella's situation.
Have you been able to identify any evidence that might prove these records have been falsified?
Some, but not enough to definitively prove my innocence, Isabella replied with frustration. I've found several instances where the handwriting on authorization signatures appears to have been forged, and there are discrepancies between the dates on various documents that suggest they were created after the fact. However, proving forgery and falsification requires expertise that I don't possess, and I'm not certain who in the palace I could trust with such sensitive analysis. Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering the challenge they faced. Isabella, I need to share with you what I've discovered about the scope of this conspiracy. It involves not only Queen Consort Vivian and Sir Geoffrey, but also Master Pemberton and Sir Reginald Blackwood. They've been meeting secretly for weeks, coordinating their efforts and preparing what they believe will be convincing evidence of your guilt. The color drained from Isabella's face as she absorbed the implications of Marcus's revelation. Sir Reginald's involvement means they're preparing formal legal proceedings against me. Captain, if they succeed in presenting their case to King Edmund, I could face not only dismissal from my position but criminal prosecution for theft from the crown. The penalties for such crimes include imprisonment and complete financial ruin. We're not going to let that happen, Marcus said with firm conviction. But we need to move quickly and strategically to counter their plans. I believe our best approach is to gather irrefutable evidence of their conspiracy and present it to King Edmund before they can make their accusations against you. Isabella's eyes filled with tears of both fear and gratitude. Captain, I cannot express how much your support means to me. For days, I felt completely alone against forces that seemed impossible to overcome. Knowing that someone believes in my innocence and is willing to help me fight for the truth gives me hope that we might prevail. Marcus reached across the table and placed his hand reassuringly over hers. Lady Isabella, I've served this kingdom for 15 years, and I've learned to recognize honor and dishonesty in the people around me. Your character and integrity are evident in everything you do, while the behavior of your accusers reveals their true nature. We will expose their conspiracy and ensure that justice prevails. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside the archives caused both Marcus and Isabella to freeze in alarm. The footsteps were accompanied by the murmur of voices, and Marcus recognized Sir Geoffrey's distinctive tone among them. Moving quickly, Marcus gestured for Isabella to gather her documents while he moved to a position where he could observe the corridor without being seen. Sir Geoffrey appeared in the archway leading to the archives, accompanied by 2 palace guards that Marcus didn't recognize immediately. Sir Geoffrey's expression was coldly triumphant as he surveyed the scene before him. Lady Isabella, Sir Geoffrey said with false courtesy, how fortunate to find you working so diligently. I'm afraid I have some official business that requires your immediate attention. Isabella stood slowly, her arms full of the financial documents she had been analyzing. What kind of official business, Sir Geoffrey? By order of Queen Consort Vivian, you are to surrender all financial records and documentation related to the cultural preservation budget for immediate review by the palace administration, Sir Geoffrey announced formally. Additionally, you are restricted from accessing any administrative offices or financial records until further notice. Marcus stepped forward from his concealment, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his sword hilt. Sir Geoffrey, by what authority are you imposing restrictions on Lady Isabella's access to her own workspace and materials? Sir Geoffrey's cold smile widened as he turned his attention to Marcus. Captain Thorne, how interesting to find you here as well. The restrictions are imposed by direct order of Her Majesty Queen Consort Vivian, acting in her capacity as overseer of palace administration. Lady Isabella is suspected of serious financial irregularities that require immediate investigation. And what evidence supports these suspicions? Marcus demanded, knowing that the confrontation he had hoped to avoid was now inevitable. That information will be presented to His Majesty King Edmund tomorrow morning in a formal hearing, Sir Geoffrey replied. At that time, all evidence of financial misconduct will be reviewed, and appropriate actions will be determined. Until then, Lady Isabella is confined to her quarters, and all materials related to the cultural budget are to be surrendered immediately. Isabella looked desperately at Marcus, understanding that their worst fears were being realized. The conspiracy had moved to its final phase, and she was being systematically cut off from any opportunity to defend herself or gather evidence to counter their accusations. "I demand to be present at any hearing concerning Lady Isabella," Marcus stated firmly. "As captain of the palace guard, I have both the right and the responsibility to ensure that all members of the royal household receive fair treatment under palace law." Sir Geoffrey's expression became openly hostile. "Captain, I suggest you remember your position and your duties. Your interference in administrative matters is neither requested nor appreciated. I trust you will conduct yourself appropriately and allow the proper authorities to handle this situation." As the guards moved to escort Isabella from the archives, Marcus realized that the battle lines had been drawn and that the final confrontation between truth and conspiracy was now inevitable. The great hall of Aldermere Palace had never felt more imposing than it did on this grey morning, as representatives of the crown gathered to hear the case against Lady Isabella Fairmont. Marcus stood at attention near the main entrance, his ceremonial uniform pristine but his mind racing with the knowledge of the conspiracy that was about to unfold before the king's very eyes. The ornate tapestries depicting centuries of royal history seemed to mock the injustice that was about to be perpetrated within these hallowed walls. King Edmund entered the chamber with the dignity and authority that had made him one of the most respected monarchs in the realm's history. At 57, he carried himself with the bearing of a man who had successfully navigated decades of political complexity while maintaining his kingdom's prosperity and stability. His deep blue eyes, weathered face, and graying beard reflected wisdom earned through years of difficult decisions and careful judgment. Queen Consort Vivian followed close behind, her elegant bearing and fashionable attire masking what Marcus now knew to be a calculating and ruthless nature. She was a strikingly beautiful woman in her early 40s, with auburn hair and intelligent green eyes that could convey warmth and charm when necessary, but which Marcus now saw contained a cold determination to achieve her objectives regardless of the cost to innocent people. Sir Geoffrey stepped forward with obvious satisfaction, carrying an ornate leather portfolio that Marcus knew contained the fabricated evidence that would be used to destroy Isabella's reputation. His thin frame and sharp features seemed perfectly suited to his role as the primary architect of this elaborate deception. "Your Majesty," Sir Geoffrey began with formal solemnity, "we have gathered this morning to address a matter of grave concern to the Crown and the integrity of palace administration. It has come to our attention that Lady Isabella Fairmont, your appointed cultural advisor, has been engaging in systematic financial misconduct that threatens the very foundations of our cultural preservation programs." King Edmund's expression remained neutral, but Marcus could see the concern in his eyes at the seriousness of the accusations being presented. "These are grave charges, Sir Geoffrey. I trust you have substantial evidence to support such serious allegations against a member of my appointed staff." "Indeed, Your Majesty," Sir Geoffrey replied, opening his portfolio and withdrawing a collection of documents that Marcus knew had been carefully prepared to present the most damaging possible interpretation of Isabella's financial activities. "Master Pemberton has conducted an exhaustive review of the cultural preservation budget, and his findings reveal a pattern of embezzlement and financial manipulation that spans nearly 8 months." Harold Pemberton stepped forward reluctantly, his usual confidence replaced by obvious discomfort with his role in the proceedings. Marcus could see that the master accountant was struggling with his conscience, but the pressure from his superiors had apparently overcome his natural integrity. "Your Majesty," Harold said with barely concealed reluctance, "my analysis of the cultural budget records has revealed numerous irregularities that suggest systematic misappropriation of funds allocated for artifact acquisition and restoration projects. The total amount involved appears to exceed 50,000 gold crowns." King Edmund's expression darkened at the mention of such a substantial sum. "Master Pemberton, are you certain that these irregularities represent intentional misconduct rather than administrative errors or procedural misunderstandings?" Harold hesitated for a moment, and Marcus could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. "Your Majesty, the pattern of irregularities is too systematic and too well concealed to be explained by simple errors. Someone with detailed knowledge of our financial procedures has been manipulating records and authorizations in a sophisticated manner designed to avoid detection." Sir Reginald Blackwood, the palace legal advisor, stepped forward to add his authority to the proceedings. His impressive physical presence and reputation for legal expertise would lend credibility to whatever conclusions he presented to the king. Your Majesty, Sir Reginald began, from a legal perspective, the evidence presented constitutes a clear case of embezzlement from the Crown. The systematic nature of the financial manipulation, combined with the substantial sums involved, would typically result in criminal prosecution and severe penalties under kingdom law. Marcus felt his anger growing as he watched these respected officials present their carefully orchestrated lies to their sovereign. The sophistication of their deception was impressive, but the knowledge that they were destroying an innocent woman's life made their performance particularly despicable. Queen Consort Vivian moved forward gracefully, her expression conveying appropriate concern and disappointment at the necessity of the proceedings. Your Majesty, she said with perfect emotional control, this situation has caused me great personal distress, as I was the one who recommended Lady Isabella for her position based on her impressive credentials and recommendations. To discover that my trust was so thoroughly betrayed is deeply troubling. The hypocrisy of Vivian's statement struck Marcus like a physical blow, but he forced himself to remain silent and observe the proceedings, knowing that his moment to act would come soon.
Where is Lady Isabella? King Edmund asked.
Surely she should be present to respond to these accusations and present her own account of these financial activities.
Sir Geoffrey's expression conveyed regret that was entirely manufactured.
Your Majesty, Lady Isabella has been confined to her quarters pending this hearing, as is standard procedure in cases involving potential criminal misconduct. However, she has been informed of the nature of the charges against her and has been given the opportunity to prepare her defense. Marcus knew that Isabella had been given no such opportunity, having been cut off from her records and confined with minimal notice of the specific accusations being leveled against her. The conspiracy had been designed to prevent her from mounting any effective defense of her actions. Nevertheless, King Edmund said firmly, I will not proceed with any judgment until I have heard directly from the accused party. Captain Thorne, please escort Lady Isabella to the chamber so that she may respond to these charges. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for his sovereign's commitment to fairness and due process.
Your Majesty, I will retrieve Lady Isabella immediately.
As Marcus turned to leave the chamber, Sir Geoffrey stepped forward with obvious concern.
Your Majesty, if I may suggest, it might be appropriate to have additional security present during Lady Isabella's testimony.
Given the serious nature of the charges and the possibility of emotional outbursts or inappropriate behavior, additional precautions seem warranted. Marcus realized that Sir Geoffrey was attempting to create an atmosphere of suspicion and hostility that would undermine Isabella's credibility before she even had a chance to speak. Your Majesty, Lady Isabella has always conducted herself with perfect propriety during her time at court. I see no reason to treat her as though she were a dangerous criminal.
King Edmund considered the exchange carefully. Captain Thorne, please escort Lady Isabella to the chamber with appropriate dignity and respect.
These are serious matters, but she remains a member of my household until proven otherwise. Marcus found Isabella in her quarters, where she had been pacing anxiously since dawn, knowing that her fate was being decided in the Great Hall. Her appearance reflected the strain of her confinement, her usually immaculate clothing was wrinkled, her face was pale with exhaustion, and her hands trembled with nervous energy. Lady Isabella, Marcus said gently, His Majesty has requested your presence in the Great Hall to respond to the charges that have been brought against you. Isabella's eyes filled with tears of both fear and gratitude. Captain, I must tell you that I've spent the night reviewing what evidence I still possess, and I've realized that the conspiracy against me is even more sophisticated than we initially understood. They've not only falsified financial records, but they've also created false testimony from vendors and suppliers who supposedly received payments that never actually occurred. Marcus felt his heart sink at this revelation.
Do you have any evidence that might counter their accusations?
Some, but I fear it may not be sufficient to overcome the weight of fabricated evidence they've assembled, Isabella replied with obvious desperation. Captain, I need you to know that regardless of what happens in that chamber, you show me more kindness and loyalty than I had any right to expect. Your willingness to believe in my innocence has meant more to me than you can possibly understand. Lady Isabella, this battle is not over, Marcus assured her with firm conviction. Truth has a way of revealing itself, even when it's buried under layers of deception and conspiracy. As they walked together toward the Great Hall, Marcus made a decision that would define the remainder of his career and, possibly his life. He had gathered enough evidence to expose the conspiracy, but, presenting that evidence would require him to directly challenge Queen Consort Vivian and her powerful allies. The risk to his own position and future was enormous, but his commitment to justice and his respect for Isabella's innocence left him no choice. They entered the great hall to find the assembled officials waiting with obvious anticipation. Isabella held her head high despite her circumstances, maintaining the dignity and composure that had always characterized her conduct at court. "Lady Isabella," King Edmund said with formal but not unkind authority, "you stand accused of serious financial misconduct in your management of the cultural preservation budget. How do you respond to these charges?" Isabella stepped forward with quiet courage. "Your Majesty, I categorically deny all accusations of financial misconduct or embezzlement. I have managed the cultural preservation budget with complete integrity and careful attention to proper procedures. Any irregularities that may have been discovered are not the result of my actions." Sir Geoffrey moved forward with his portfolio of fabricated evidence. "Your Majesty, if I may present the specific documentation that supports our accusations." "Before any evidence is presented," Marcus said, stepping forward with sudden authority, "I request permission to address His Majesty on a matter directly related to these proceedings." Queen Consort Vivian's expression showed the first crack in her composed facade, while Sir Geoffrey's face darkened with obvious alarm. They had not anticipated that Marcus would choose this moment to make his move. King Edmund looked surprised but nodded his consent. "Captain Thorne, you may speak." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that the words he was about to speak would change everything for everyone in the chamber. "Your Majesty, I have conducted an extensive investigation into the circumstances surrounding these accusations, and I have discovered evidence of a conspiracy to falsely accuse Lady Isabella and destroy her reputation through manufactured evidence and fabricated financial records." The silence that followed Marcus's statement was deafening, as the implications of his accusations settled over the chamber like a thundercloud. The great hall erupted in stunned silence as Marcus's accusation hung in the air like a sword suspended over the assembled nobles. King Edmund's weathered face showed no emotion, but his penetrating gaze moved methodically from Marcus to each of the accused conspirators, measuring their reactions with the keen insight that had served him well throughout his reign. Queen Consort Vivian was the first to recover her composure, though Marcus noticed a slight tremor in her hands as she stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is an outrageous accusation from a guard who has clearly overstepped his authority and allowed his judgment to be compromised by personal feelings for the accused." Sir Geoffrey's face had gone pale, but he attempted to maintain his authoritative demeanor. "Captain Thorne's allegations are not only inappropriate but potentially treasonous. To suggest that Her Majesty would engage in such activities is beyond acceptable bounds of conduct." Marcus stood his ground, drawing strength from the knowledge that everything he was about to reveal was true. "Your Majesty, I have documented evidence of secret meetings, falsified records, and coordinated efforts to frame Lady Isabella. I have witnessed testimony from palace staff who have observed unusual activities and suspicious behavior from the accused parties." King Edmund raised his hand for silence, his expression thoughtful as he considered the explosive situation developing before him. "Captain Thorne, these are extremely serious accusations that strike at the very heart of palace administration and trust. I trust you have substantial evidence to support such claims." "I do, Your Majesty," Marcus replied firmly. "Over the past several days, I have interviewed palace staff, reviewed financial procedures, and documented a pattern of deception that extends far beyond simple accounting irregularities." Marcus withdrew his leather journal from his uniform and opened it to the careful notes he had compiled during his investigation. "Mrs. Eleanor Hartbridge, our head housekeeper, has observed secret meetings in Queen Consort Vivian's chambers occurring nearly every evening for the past 2 weeks. These meetings involved Sir Geoffrey, Master Pemberton, and Sir Reginald, discussing what they referred to as finalizing evidence and ensuring their presentation would be convincing." Harold Pemberton stepped forward, his face flushed with shame and anxiety. "Your Majesty, I must confess that I have been under enormous pressure to interpret financial records in a manner that would support predetermined conclusions. The irregularities I reported are real, but they were created through manipulation of existing records rather than through Lady Isabella's actions." The master accountant's admission sent shockwaves through the chamber, as the foundation of the case against Isabella began to crumble before everyone's eyes.
Sir Geoffrey moved quickly to damage control. Your Majesty, Master Pemberton has clearly been influenced by Captain Thorne's inappropriate investigation. His statements cannot be considered reliable under these circumstances.
On the contrary, Marcus interjected, producing additional documentation from his journal. Master Pemberton's confession confirms what my investigation has already established through multiple independent sources. Guard Thomas Whitmore has observed Sir Geoffrey conducting clandestine meetings and handling documents in unusual circumstances. The palace cleaning staff has reported requests to pay special attention to Lady Isabella's personal effects and workspace, supposedly for security purposes but actually to facilitate the planting of incriminating evidence. Isabella stepped forward with newfound confidence, bolstered by Marcus's revelations and Harold's confession. Your Majesty, during my confinement, I was able to analyze some of the financial documents that were supposedly evidence of my guilt. Several of the authorization signatures appear to have been forged, and there are inconsistencies in dating that suggest documents were created after the fact to support false accusations. King Edmund's expression had grown increasingly stern as the evidence of conspiracy accumulated before him. Sir Reginald, you have been unusually silent during these revelations. As our legal advisor, what is your assessment of these competing claims and evidence? Sir Reginald Blackwood found himself in an impossible position, caught between his involvement in the conspiracy and his professional obligation to provide honest legal counsel to his sovereign. Your Majesty, the situation has become quite complex, with serious accusations being made in multiple directions. That's not an answer to my question, King Edmund said with obvious displeasure. I asked for your legal assessment of the evidence that has been presented. Marcus seized the moment to present his most damaging evidence. Your Majesty, Sir Reginald's reluctance to provide clear legal guidance may be related to his own participation in the conspiracy against Lady Isabella. Guard Whitmore observed him attending the secret meetings where the frame-up was being coordinated. The legal advisor's composure finally cracked under the mounting evidence and pressure. Your Majesty, I have been placed in an extremely difficult position, caught between conflicting loyalties and pressures that I found impossible to navigate successfully. Queen Consort Vivian realized that the conspiracy was collapsing around her, but she made one final attempt to salvage the situation through royal authority and manipulation. Edmund, surely you cannot give credence to these wild accusations against your own wife. Captain Thorne has clearly exceeded his authority and allowed his personal feelings to compromise his judgment. I demand that he be disciplined for his inappropriate conduct. King Edmund's eyes flashed with anger as he turned his full attention to his wife. Vivian, the evidence presented suggests that you have orchestrated an elaborate conspiracy to destroy the reputation of an innocent member of my household. These are not wild accusations but documented facts supported by multiple witnesses and physical evidence. Marcus felt a surge of vindication as his sovereign demonstrated the wisdom and integrity that had made him such a respected ruler. Your Majesty, the conspiracy was motivated by Queen Consort Vivian's desire to remove Lady Isabella from the palace for reasons that remain unclear. Rather than addressing her concerns through proper channels, she chose to fabricate criminal charges that could have resulted in Lady Isabella's imprisonment and financial ruin. Isabella stepped forward with quiet dignity. Your Majesty, I have tried to understand what might have motivated such hatred toward me, but I have been unable to identify any actions or decisions on my part that could justify such extreme measures. Queen Consort Vivian's carefully constructed facade finally shattered completely. That woman has been undermining my authority and influence within the palace from the moment she arrived. Her cultural programs and scholarly reputation were beginning to overshadow my own contributions to the kingdom's prestige. I could not allow her to continue diminishing my position and importance. The admission of petty jealousy and wounded pride as the motivation for such an elaborate conspiracy sent a wave of disgust through the chamber. Even Sir Geoffrey seemed stunned by the Queen Consort's candid revelation of her true motives. King Edmund's voice carried the full weight of royal authority and moral outrage as he addressed the assembled conspirators. I am deeply sickened by what I have heard in this chamber today. The idea that members of my own household would engage in such elaborate deception and manipulation for personal gain is a betrayal of everything this kingdom represents. Marcus felt a profound sense of relief and vindication as justice finally began to prevail over conspiracy and deception. Your Majesty, Lady Isabella has suffered greatly during this ordeal, but her courage and integrity have been proven beyond any doubt.
Indeed they have, King Edmund agreed, turning to Isabella with obvious remorse for the injustice she had endured. Lady Isabella, I offer you my deepest apologies for the treatment you have received and my admiration for the grace with which you have handled this difficult situation. Your position as cultural advisor is not only secure but will be enhanced with additional resources and authority. Isabella's eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. Your Majesty, I am honored by your confidence and support. I pledge to continue serving the kingdom with the same dedication and integrity that I have always strived to maintain. King Edmund's attention then turned to the punishment of the conspirators, his expression reflecting the seriousness with which he viewed their crimes against justice and the crown. Queen Consort Vivian, your actions have violated the most fundamental principles of honor and justice. You are stripped of all administrative authority within the palace and will be confined to your private chambers pending further decisions about your future. Vivian's face crumpled as the full consequences of her actions became clear. Her gamble for power and influence had not only failed but had destroyed her position and reputation permanently. Sir Geoffrey Hartwell, the king continued, your role as architect of this conspiracy makes you equally culpable for its consequences. You are dismissed from all positions of authority and are banned from palace grounds permanently. Sir Geoffrey accepted his fate with resigned dignity, knowing that his career and reputation were destroyed beyond any possibility of redemption. Harold Pemberton stepped forward with obvious contrition. Your Majesty, I accept full responsibility for my weakness in allowing myself to be manipulated into participating in this conspiracy. I offer no excuses for my conduct and accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate. King Edmund considered the master accountant's confession and apparent genuine remorse. Master Pemberton, your ultimate decision to tell the truth has contributed significantly to exposing this conspiracy. While your actions cannot be excused, your honesty in this chamber demonstrates that you retain some measure of honor. You will be demoted from your position but may remain in the palace in a reduced capacity. Sir Reginald Blackwood received a similar judgment, his professional reputation damaged but not entirely destroyed due to his peripheral role in the conspiracy. Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction as justice was finally served and the truth was revealed for all to see. His decision to risk his career and position to defend Lady Isabella had been vindicated completely. King Edmund addressed Marcus directly, his voice carrying warmth and respect. Captain Thorne, your commitment to justice and your courage in exposing this conspiracy reflect the highest ideals of service to the crown. Your actions have not only saved an innocent woman from destruction but have also preserved the integrity of palace administration. You are hereby promoted to the rank of Commander of the Palace Guard, with expanded authority and responsibilities. The recognition and promotion were gratifying, but Marcus felt his greatest satisfaction came from knowing that Lady Isabella's innocence had been established and her reputation restored. Your Majesty, I am honored by your confidence, but my greatest reward is seeing justice prevail over deception. Isabella approached Marcus with tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Commander Thorne, there are no words adequate to express my appreciation for your courage and loyalty. You risked everything to defend someone you barely knew, motivated only by your commitment to truth and justice. Marcus took her hands in his, feeling a warmth and connection that transcended their professional relationship. Lady Isabella, your strength and dignity throughout this ordeal have been an inspiration. Your character and integrity were evident from our first conversation, and I am honored to have played a role in ensuring that truth prevailed. As the great hall gradually emptied and the immediate drama of the conspiracy's exposure began to settle, Marcus and Isabella found themselves standing together in the quiet chamber, both contemplating the events that had brought them to this moment of triumph over injustice. The afternoon sun had finally broken through the clouds, streaming through the tall windows and casting warm light across the ancient tapestries and marble floors of Aldermere Palace. The storm that had raged both outside and within the palace walls had finally passed, leaving in its wake a renewed sense of justice and integrity that would guide the kingdom forward into a brighter future. Marcus realized that his life had been fundamentally changed by the events of the past week, not only through his promotion and enhanced responsibilities, but
through his relationship with Lady Isabella and his renewed understanding of what truly mattered in his service to the crown. The conspiracy had tested his principles and his courage, and he had emerged with a deeper appreciation for the importance of standing up for truth and justice, regardless of the personal cost. Lady Isabella had similarly been transformed by her ordeal, emerging from the crucible of false accusation and conspiracy with her integrity intact and her position stronger than ever. Her experience had taught her valuable lessons about the complexities of palace politics and the importance of having allies who shared her commitment to honor and truth. As they walked together from the great hall toward the palace gardens, where the autumn flowers still bloomed despite the recent storms, both Marcus and Isabella understood that they had not only survived a dangerous conspiracy but had forged a bond of trust and mutual respect that would endure long beyond the immediate crisis that had brought them together. The Palace of Aldermere had witnessed many dramas throughout its long history, but few had demonstrated so clearly the eternal struggle between truth and deception, between integrity and ambition, and between the courage to do what is right and the temptation to take the easier path of silence and complicity. In the end, as always in the stories that truly matter, justice had prevailed, and those who had shown courage and honor in the face of adversity had been rewarded with triumph over those who had chosen the path of deception and betrayal. The marble corridors would continue to echo with the whispers and intrigues that are inevitable in any seat of power, but the events surrounding Lady Isabella's vindication would serve as a lasting reminder that truth, when championed by those brave enough to defend it, possesses a power that no conspiracy can ultimately overcome.